Book 4. The following excerpts are Camille's own writings, gathered from various notebooks and journals by family members. They are in chronological order of the dates that she wrote them, not necessarily the order of the actual event. June 10, 1985, while visiting Paul and Vicky in Bozeman, Montana. Recalling when Tom was born. I remember this date very well. We were living in Preston. Previously, I had been invited to read a poem of mine at a dinner banquet in the Hotel Utah. The occasion, a writers' annual convention. It was under the direction of Richard L. Evans. For years, I listened to his voice on the program, The Spoken Word at Temple Square. So it was that I received a letter signed by RLE stating that my name had been selected with a few other names to entertain at a dinner by reading a selection of our own writing. I had been asked for a poem. I felt honored, frightened, but very determined to be there. I was prepared. Frank was going to drive me down to Salt Lake. As I remember, the date of the convention was around the 15th of June. But early on the morning of the 10th, Mark called from Bridger Canyon, Montana, saying Tom had been born that morning. They needed help. Could I come right up? 57, Plack said yes. My heart felt real disappointment. I sent a hurried message of explanation to the convention committee, got in the dark blue coupe and headed for Montana. Much to my embarrassment, I heard later that the message hadn't been received. I have teased Tom about this several times. May 1988. Dear Diary, my heart is so full of joy today I hardly know where to start to express my deep feelings of gratitude. Last Wednesday, Marilyn came to Logan for me. She took me to the plane Thursday morning where I met Paul and Vicky and rode with them from SLC to St. Louis, Mo, where Gerald met us and took us to Columbia, Mo. How dear it was to be with them again after a long winter spent in Logan with Beth and Mark, who lived in my home. Their kindness to me I must write about later. Getting back to Columbia, it was heavenly to laugh and visit with each other. Friday, Gerald took Paul, Vicky, and myself to his office where he showed us the results of his research, etc. Ethotl may be too tired, but I think I was on cloud 9. Then in the evening, we went to Peggy's for supper. This was so interesting and so much fun. Paul and Vicky met Larry for the first time. Kimberly, their little girl, was delightful. Supper perfect with Peggy as a hostess. Saturday morning, Margaret, Gerald, Vicky, and Paul left me here at 10:30 a.m. to attend the graduation of Joni's from law school. How happy we all were. After the exercises, they all met in St. Louis for supper, including Mike, who had flown in from Reno. They spent the night in St. Louis, and then Paul and Joni stopped here Sunday on their way to Seattle. Mike had to leave early for Reno. Gerald and Margaret took Vicky to see the huge arch, then left her at the airport where she caught a plane for Reno. To the 18th of May, Paul and Joni are moving her furniture, which went ahead, into an apartment. Paul will catch a plane to Reno, and I am little by little coming down to earth, seemingly none the worse for all the exciting happiness I have had. Columbia, May 20th, 1988. Today is Paul's birthday, and I imagine he will get home to Reno very late. Wish I could wish him a happy birthday. We'll have to save it for later. Since being here, I feel as if a load had been lifted from my shoulders. A new environment is always good to renew one's thoughts. However, I miss my dear ones in the West. Everything is done here to make me feel comfortable. My children are such a comfort to me, no matter where I am with them. It's always the same. Last Thursday, a week only since I left SLC, Gerald had a call from Eric Lindsay saying he had a sale for my home. The price was good, and we certainly would have gone through with the deal. But we felt like we should have had a larger down payment than the people could give, so we turned it down. I am feeling quite well, but I think it will take a little time to get used to the change in altitude and climate. All I can say is, here is a paradise of glory. I watched the gentle twilight shadows rest down over the green trees, flowers and fragrance of May, with a peace in my soul. Sunday, June 22nd, 1988, 58. I attended sacrament meeting with Gerald and Margaret. I felt very comfortable and so happy I went. In the evening, the high priests and their wives came to his home and listened to him lecture on his trip to China. Everyone was very interested. A very pleasant evening. June 1988, today Gerald left for Long Island, New York, where he went to see about the publishing of his book on maize. While there, he attended and gave a lecture at a genetics seminar, ate dinner with a close friend, Barbara McClintock, this year's Nobel Prize winner, visited with another Nobel Prize winner, and was assured that money would be forthcoming for the printing of his book. So his trip was very successful and enjoyable, but he said it was very hot. July 4th, 88. A quiet day. Kathy Nuffer, Cole Nuffer, and myself have stayed in the house because of the heat, which hasn't been as bad as we thought it may be. Marilyn called this morning. She and Ken had just arrived home after a trip to California. Yesterday I was off and on the telephone talking to Paul and Gerald, who were at the house in Logan. Gerald was loading some of my belongings to bring Tom here. It almost broke my heart to not be there with them. But tonight, as Gerald and Margaret drove in the driveway, I felt untold joy at seeing them again. How I have missed them. They are very tired after such a long drive, and we will talk more in detail in the morning. July 12th, 88. Dear God, how beautiful and glorious are all things of thy creation. Early morning, sunlight filtering through the woods, caressing each intricate oak leaf, the flash of scarlet as cardinals wing the air. Celebrating a new dawning, morning. Oh, that my heart were as light. It is 7 o'clock. I am sitting in the living room looking as far as the eye can see across the vast expanse of trees garbed in summer green. Salt Lake City, December 26, 1988. After a long time, I am attempting to write in a diary again. Dear Lord, help me to be not so slothful as I have been in the past. I left Columbia, Missouri by plane on December 21st. When I think of the many days and hours dreading and being unsure of that undertaking, I can laugh at myself. The trip was quite easy for me, also enjoyable, as I met some very nice people who sat near me. Gerald and Margaret and family were all so caring of me. After I got over my jet lag, I started feeling quite well. Then a number of irritating things started happening to me. A Chinese Dr. Lee was lecturing, and Gerald and Margaret were having open house for him. As left my room to be introduced to him, I fell down the 5 carpeted stairs. I fell head first. I stood on my feet after being helped up with a sudden swelling over each eye. I determined I would stand there and be introduced to him anyway, and this I did smiling, even though I was seething with anger inside. He was nice, cultured, understanding, and well-dressed. Well, so much for that, but I suffered with a bruised face and 2 terrible black eyes. So there was a time of staying in and away from church and recuperating. Then of all things, my forehead and left eyebrow and lids broke out with a rash and sores such as I have never seen before. I thought it was because of an allergy to a new medication I had started taking. Gerald bathed my face with boric acid water, but it began to get much worse. The burning of it was terrible suffering. My doctor, Zweig told me to come in, and he took one look and said, "Shingles. Horror of horrors." I had heard about that, but never thought I may have such a thing, so 2 doctors were quite concerned about it reaching my optic nerve. If so, I could expect terrific headaches and perhaps blindness in the left eye. So they worked diligently, and Margaret and Gerald made numerous trips to the doctor's office. I was such a sight I didn't want to have my hair dressed. There were more weeks of staying away from gatherings. Although Gerald or Margaret took me for a ride each day through the lonely weeks, I believe these happenings made a coward out of me, and I didn't believe I would be able to come to Utah for Christmas. I believe the little happenings can grieve us at the time, but they are really stepping stones in the river of life. I girded up my loins and set my determination juices roiling and found myself here at Marilyn's for Christmas. She met me at the plane, and I even felt so good I was practically the first passenger off the plane. I left Columbia with no snow and a slightly chilly breeze and arrived in SLC in a winter blizzard. Christmas morning, 1988. At 9 o'clock, Ken, Jason, Marilyn, and myself went to Holly and Brent's apartment. It was such a precious time together. We opened gifts, visited, ate breakfast, and enjoyed each other. The Christmas tree was so festive and beautiful with colored lights and ornaments. Holly is so lovely, gracious, and caring. A white Christmas. The fragile, dark limbs of leafless trees reach into a pale, frosty sky. The evergreens are bowing low with their burden of snow. The roofs of old sheds, fences, and housetops wear a crown of white. Winter in full glory is resplendent everywhere except the streets and freeways, where it becomes at time a killer. Men in their cars are useless toys in the fury of a winter storm. Beth and Mark and Holly Carter spent Christmas Eve and morning with Pam and family at Springville, just out of Provo. Their trip home Christmas Day was very frightening. December 28, 88. Gerald and Margaret left today for Molokai, Hawaii this morning. I pray that they will be safe in their flying and that Gerald will not have any trouble with his heart. He says it is fine now, but I have noticed he has slowed up some, and pray also that Margaret will keep well. I know that families who love as our family does can be together in spirit no matter the distance in miles which separate them. For Christmas, I sent Paul, Vicky, and Kelly a letter with some happenings of the time we were together in Bozeman from my diary. I thought they would enjoy reading them and we could that way visit again. In the meantime, they sent me a cassette of my favorite songs, especially one that Paul knew I loved, Green, Green Grass of Home. He asked Vicky to type the words for me. I played it and cried for joy, for truly our spirits met in this precious time. How kind of God to make it so that in times of sweet meditation, we as loved ones can be together in spirit. I talked to Paul this morning. He said how they had loved my Christmas letter. Life can be so sweet. Yet I have more serious things to record. I am sad and happy, for one see no sorrow in death, at an old age. My sister Mabel died yesterday at her home in Bountiful. She had dressed to go shopping with Noreen, who found her lying on her bed, waiting. How wonderful that she could go so peacefully. One loved her, yet I never knew her. I remember well the day she was born for Father, and I were at the park in Preston, seated in the grandstand watching the 4th of July celebration, Book 1. The year was 1910. My Aunt Hazel was with Mother on the farm 3.5 miles north and west. I also remember of seeing Halley's Comet that same year. As I was standing in the dooryard, just outside the kitchen, by the water pump and large wooden porch which reached across the whole southern part of the house, yellow frame house Dad had bought from Ben Davis when the family had moved from South Preston to the farm. South Preston was called, or known as, Fairview when we had lived there. Going back to my sister, she was a little too young for us to be playmates, perhaps. Glenn, my brother, was closer to her age, yet I remember how all the family enjoyed a baby in the house again, and how thrilled we were as we held out our hands to her as she learned to walk all by herself. Later, when I was 12 years of age, I started sewing for Mother and her. 11 seems that I had had a few bad experiences as I sewed for the rather large dolls Santa brought for Christmas, especially when it came to setting in sleeves for their doll dresses. SLC, January 11th, 1989, 10 a.m., A White World Today. To look out makes one feel as if they were on a strange planet. Stillness. Silence. 1. Think I could cut it if I tried. Each trunk, limb, and twig holds out a serving of frosted snow 1/2 inch thick. The evergreens' sturdy arms bow low with burdens of iced goodies. Rooftops are heavily iced with white mountain cake frosting. Mounds of snow mysteriously hide the earth's drabness, and I, sitting inside, should be a prisoner, but I am not, for my brain is churning for words to describe this silent world of white beauty. It is snowing now, harder and harder. Power lines are sagging ropes of ribbon, trembling with their overweight. Mist steals near and nearer, as if closing in on me. Silence, silence, closing nearer a strange world. I can't hear the heartbeat of the earth, but I know it is beating somehow. It's as though everything is waiting for the earth to catch her breath. I am alone in this strange and wonderful sphere of beauty and serenity, and yet mundane and practicable life pulls me with such force I am in 2 spheres and must leave part of myself in reality. For today Marilyn is ill with a bad tooth which she has had to have pulled, and the sewer system has become plugged, and I am a guest in this house with my potent water pills to be taken and other fine skills of toiletries to be taken care of. And Ken says to me, "Mother, you are sure nice to have around." Did any mother-in-law ever get a greater compliment? And now he is fixing me a special dinner because, as he says, you are very good-natured. I said, well, it isn't your fault that the sewer got plugged. That snow is in great parts making driving hazardous, and Marilyn had to pick today and yesterday to have trouble with a tooth, which, by the way, is better now, and I will escape again to my lovely world outside the window. SLC March 4, 1989. Oh, that I had the strength and breath to praise the giver of all blessings, God. Words cannot express the feelings of my heart today, March 4th. Gerald's birthday. He called me from Wisconsin on his way home from Germany, where he has lectured at a scientific congress. He wrote about it as follows. Mother, as I stood before an audience of 1,000 people, I spoke of my grandfather, John Nuffer, leaving his native land, Hoheneufen, as a young man of 19. I think he would be proud of a grandson standing here today, for I am proud to be here. Tears of pure joy sprung as I listened to his strong voice and laughter as he told how walking the streets of Germany was not very comfortable in the rain, so he bought a hat. Now he looked like a German. A hat, a name, but he didn't talk German. He chuckled. All the years of my life exciting, the later ones painful, but to live to see this day is supreme joy, the wonders of it all. Columbia, Missouri, May 1, 1989. On April 25, 89, Barb Nuffer and I flew to Columbia. Gerald and Margaret met us at the Kansas City airport. I hated to leave Marilyn and Ken. It is so emotional to live with dear ones then leave. We had some pleasant times in the backyard of their home. I enjoyed the swinging wide chair as I watched Marilyn dig and weed her flower garden. Columbia, Missouri, May 1989, 8 a.m. The house dark, almost like night as I went downstairs. Sensing a storm, I turned the TV to the Weather Channel. Warning. High wind thunderstorms, severe, and possibly tornadoes. Stay indoors, keep away from windows. Do not use electrical appliances and the phones. The sky hung like a black umbrella over the vast woods and house. A few minutes later, I looked out the large window. The sky had changed now, a little of the darkness had lifted. Threatening clouds swirled. The telephone rang. It was Gerald. I think he thought that I might be concerned. How are you doing? I am excited. If it gets bad, you and Margaret go downstairs. We will, I answered, but he told me to watch the storm come in. It was coming. Mida 1 looked out, and a downpour of rain hit the anguished trees, which at times seem as if they may lose their limbs, for the wind was merciless as it swept across the H-inks on Creek Valley. Columbia, Mo, June 4, 1989. I awakened to the fragrant smell of sausage cooking and hot biscuits as Gerald opened my door saying, "Breakfast in 15 minutes, Mother." How very nice to be called by a son with a big, cheery smile. Columbia, June 30th, 1989. I should write every day. I don't. Why? Woods lovely, tranquil, birdsong. Leaves on fragile twigs wave in fragrant breezes. Yet it will be quite warm today, feeling better. I called Marilyn. She has a part-time job in a hospital. She sounded happy. Called Paul, but he just left for Montana. He and Mark are going fishing. Mike flew Paul up in their plane. Columbia, Mo, July 4th, 89. The woods are calm today, submissive to a hot sun, their arms outstretched to whatever may come, quiet respite for the birds and bushy-tailed squirrels, a harem for little wild animals of the forest, their shiny green leaves occasionally stirred by a fragrant whisper of a breeze. Yet who knows, in an hour or less the fury of a wind may whip them as if they were a willow, and they will become agitated, twisting and turning giant arms in all directions. This is a day of serenity in this wooded paradise. We are away from the wild and pleasureful celebrations. I have been thinking of many things today. Columbia, Mo, September 16th, 89, 2:45 p.m., a day to remember. The woods serene, wrapped in bright sunlight, and all is well. Marilyn called this morning as usual, her cheery, lovable self. She asked about my eyes. I am a little discouraged because of Dr. Wiles' reluctance to do anything at the present time for them, but I suppose something can be done for them. On Margaret's birthday, the 14th, we went to visit Peggy and see the new baby. Another great-grandchild, and she is adorable and healthy. Garth and John Neuffer from NY and Washington, D.C. flew to St. Louis, rented a car, and came to visit us for a couple or 3 days. Each moment they were here was precious. They are so lovable and dear to be around. May 1st, 1991. Gerald, you asked me to write about what took place in my life for a few years after my 8th grade graduation, but I thought I would like to recall a few years back in my childhood, which are so dear to my heart. At about 7 or 8 years, I had a fervent prayer answered. I could hardly believe it. I watched with wide eyes and wonder. As a very young child, I felt that God made the flowers and beauty of the fields especially for me, and when my prayer was answered, I was sure of it. But as I grew older, I had to admit that all the beauty was not for me alone. Even if I had spent hours and days talking with God and solving my problems, worshiping every beautiful thing. Now that I am older, I realize that everyone on earth can have God for a friend with all earth's beauties if they will live for this great privilege. Again, I must go back to the memories of my school teachers, how I loved them. Mary Daly, my first, and Mame Thomas did not impress me. Nina Welker from Bloomington in the Bear Lake area I loved dearly. She encouraged me to write poems. She became ill and had to go home. I was heartbroken. She wrote to me. I loved her letters and answered some of them. After her came Rebecca Clark. I loved her also. She said I must keep writing. She later married a Charles and lived in Riverdale, Idaho, near the bottom of the Dugway. Somewhere between Rebecca and Nina, I had pneumonia and large tonsils, which had to have removed. At this time, I had to miss a half-year's schooling. I had become thinner because the doctors at the time never recognized it. My dad happened to be visiting relatives in Ogden, Utah, and they were having 2 boys with tonsils taken out. My dad, who had been so concerned about me, as was Mother, recognized the symptoms of their illness and came home and told Dr. Canfield, our doctor. So Dad and Mother were off in a few days to Dr. Pugmire in Ogden, and I had my tonsils out, but I had been ill so long it took quite a while to get back to good health again. Claude Hawkes was my 5th grade teacher and half of the 6th. I was so happy. Again I said, the perfect teacher. I felt so confident and enjoyed standing beside my desk entering into the class discussion. I was older now and happier than I had ever been with school. The following section came from a notebook submitted by Barbara Nuffer, which was Camille's final journal. February 10, 1990. This day I have written to Kara Phillips on the death of her only daughter. Birthday letter to Holly Nemi. Sent for subscription to Ensign for Paul and Vicky. I had a sweet letter from Kurt's wife, Jana Gerald called me. Weather nice. I am striving for deeper faith. February 11, 1990, wrote to Dolores Cornish. February 13, 1990. Went to Dr. Stone's. He started me on a new medication. Hope it helps. Sitting in a chair alone tonight, I felt a prompting. Guidance. A second of feeling better. And I must listen to it. Then Mike called me. Oh, how dear his voice sounded. He even made me laugh. How wonderful it was. Beth and Mark are at the temple tonight. February 14, 1990. A lonesome day. Oh, if I could feel better, so tired of limited breathing, tied up to an oxygen tank. God forgive me for complaining for Duffigant. Thou hast blessed me all the days of my life. Forgive me for being so weak. Oh, where is my faith? But the sunlight covers our area as far as we can see. A recent snow is melting. Oh, that my soul was as bright. Gerald called tonight. February 16, 1990. I have written a letter to Dolores Cornish. She is very ill. I tried to make it a letter of cheer. I hope I did. Skies partly cloudy, February 17, 1990. Kurt N. called me tonight. I love his calls and Jana's letters. Vicky called and cheered me up. A bad night last night. Paul at a meeting. Reno had a terrible snowstorm. February 22nd, 1990. I had a permanent today. How difficult it is. Beth drove me to the shop and waited for me. Gerald called last night. Paul called this morning. March 12, 1990. Snowstorms yesterday, Sunday. Jim Carter is here for a while. Sun shining today. Paul called Sunday, his voice sweet as ever. Marilyn called last week. Gerald leaves tomorrow for Hawaii. Haven't heard from him for a while. How I miss him. Mark and Beth are so good to me. I wish I knew where I may be in the near future. It is so stressful not knowing. I pray for peace of mind, but it doesn't come. Where is my faith? Called Athene last night. March 13, 1990. Special day, for on this day a special spirit came to live with us. She has been a blessing to everyone all these years. It is 8 and she is playing her piano. How I love her. Mark and Jim busy with calving. Beth received phone calls from her children. Camille, Pam, Susan, Bruce and Richard called in the evening. Beth took me to Dr. Stone's at 2:30. I had a chest x-ray. They were remodeling. Rather than walk up a long stair, Ruth, a nurse, pushed me in a wheelchair up and around to the back door. How we laughed. The air was fresh. I said, I wonder what Dr. Omer and Wendell Budge would say if they saw this. Omer's dead, Ruth said. I was so surprised. 2 years ago, cancer. I visited with Gary, the X-ray man. We talked about the wonderful doctors that were there through the years. He said the doctors today are well up on things, but they don't have time to talk to their patients. I agree with him. Holly Carter came in the evening and brought flowers to her mom and a lot of Chinese food. Good. And a clever top to wear with pants for her mom. Afterward, Mark and she cleaned up the kitchen. It was a lovely day all in all. I sort of blacked out at the table. Don't know what it signifies. Gerald called last night. He and Margaret flew to Hawaii today. March 15th, 1990. A special day. Garth Nuffer called from San Diego. My heart soared. What a joy to hear his pleasant voice. Visiting his mother. Relaxing a bit before his new position starts in Wash, D.C. If he only knew how it lifted my spirits. Oh, Frank, it was almost like hearing from you. You can be very proud of your children. Oh, that you could have lived to enjoy them. I made a remark to Garth of how proud I am of them. Well, grandmother, we come from a great family, he said. The Neuffers are a great family. Later, Garth said, we'll have to get together and discuss P.P. Pratt. I think that is the first time I ever heard him speak of my great-grandfather. I have always tried not to brag of PPP. Going back to Garth, he has such a good outlook on life. He is a peacemaker, a mediator. He never argues politics. He sees both sides. He is very lovable and sensitive. How I love him. March 18th, 1990, dear brother Glenn's birthday. A nice day. Brother Cranbuell, my used-to-be home teacher, how happy we were to see each other again. He came here today, gave me a big hug, which I don't get much of anymore. Talked with Vicky today. Paul called tonight, his dear happy self. What would I do without him? We listened to the video about P.P. Pratt and the Book of Mormon. Well done. It touched me deeply. May 9th, 1990. Mark C. went to Soda Springs yesterday. He picked Bluebell for me and gave them to me before he went to feed the cattle. He laid them on my table just as I awakened. It made my day. Heavy frost last night, but they came to life when in water. They had frosted somewhat in Soda S. Maybe they sprang back to life just for me, I wonder? June 13th, 1990. A hectic day, but I am so glad I persevered enough to have a permanent. Talked to Evelyn Stoddart. A nice little visit with others at the supper table. Gerald called at 9 p.m. Mother, I love you and will tuck you in bed with a hug and a kiss over the telephone. I love you. Paul called me at 10 p.m. I love you, Mother. How are you? Etc. He told me about the pack rats that had invaded his truck engine and wheels. We laughed. Some of them had been killed when he started the motor, the terrible smell, the big, beautiful dog who knew his truck by its smell and ran to meet him when he went to Reno. How we laughed. My wonderful children. June 17th, 1990. Father's Day. My dear Robert Neuffer called today. I was surprised, as he has been at sea. He is his dear self, wants a family reunion, etc. July 4th, 1990. Oh, what a beautiful day. Why? Because I was lonely. A knock. Darlene Mon peeped around the corner. Do you know me? Of course I do. She stood in the shadows, but I knew her. And then Dale Cole's deep voice. We've found you at last. Aunt Camille, we have looked everywhere for you. Louise and Lynn were with them. We hugged, laughed, and chatted. I believe they had been at Lewiston for the celebration. They said Gene had told them he heard I was at the Sunshine Terrace. Did that ever bring me to life in a hurry? Oh well, I guess it was funny anyway. We talked about everything and everybody. What a glorious time we had. I wished I could keep them forever. They are so dear. Lamb's still uplifted from their visit. Sometime in another place, I hope to talk to Cliff and tell him how I have enjoyed his children. They are so full of love, kindness, and compassion, which they have showered on me abundantly. How I love them. July 9th, 1990. Something wonderful happened last night about 9:30. John Neuffer called me from NY. Oh, his dear voice came loud and clear over the wires. He said he was going to change his living area. He is tired of NY, its hustle, crowds, etc. He sounded rather undecided. He may go to Tokyo, but he really wants to come west. Like me, he longs for the beauty of Bridger Canyon, etc. He has been employed at the Japanese embassy in NY. He sounded so great, mature, asked me all about what I was doing and how I felt. Oh, if his dad could have enjoyed him like I have. Little did I know when Frank was a little boy that he would be able to give me so much joy during his lifetime, and that happiness would carry on after he had gone through his children. The Lord has been good to me. His blessings are so great. July 22nd, 1990, yesterday MD's birthday. Marilyn drove from SLC late yesterday afternoon. She brought so many things to me that I needed. What a delight to have her here. She slept on the floor beside my bed, and it was so wonderful to be together again. She hung my pictures and put things about in my room. I am sitting here tonight feeling suddenly very luxurious in my room. She went to breakfast with me, met the breakfast pals, went home about 11 a.m. Oh, the wonder of it all, my life, my blessings. Jamie slipped in to see me about 8 to see the picture of the deep woods which hangs over my bed. She wants to make a centerpiece for my table. How dear she is with her wide-eyed wonder and beautiful face. As we talked, Kay came in. We sat and talked. I love them already. They are dear friends. But the flower arrangement must be kept secret. A happy, happy day indeed. My life is rich with love. September 6th, 1990. Can it be that September is here? How can I let a day go by without telling this leaflet of all the happy things that have taken place? Kathy N. Vargas called me twice. They are fine. Robert N. called. Nadine, Bob, and Darlene drove up from SLC the other night. What a wonderful visit we had together. We laughed and talked. They are so good to me. Gerald and Margaret came to Logan the latter part of July. They went to a 50th class reunion. Just rented a car at SLC. He was going to take me to Bozeman to visit Paul and family. But I didn't go. It would have been too hard on me. But I really had to talk to myself. I wanted to go so bad. They had a wonderful time. Dolores and John came from Clyde Park to visit at Paul's. Gerald was in and out to see me for 2 weeks, and it was wonderful. Since going home, they have been to Boston. While in the area, they looked up the home of Henry Thoreau, Walden Pond. Gerald called and told me all about it. It thrilled me no end. September 13th, 1990. A permanent yesterday. Marilyn came up, brought some vests and sweaters. She is so dear. Beth came down and fixed supper. Sliced tomatoes, whole wheat bread, peaches, and cream. We sat together, ate, laughed, and talked. October 21st, 1990. And so life goes on here. Sad, glad, most often happy. Time goes swiftly. The trees outside my window are mostly green, but some limbs are turning gold. Sunlight caresses a bouquet of wine-colored mum in a green vase. A glorious sight. My heart is filled with ecstasy at the miracle of God's ovations. The candle Mike gave me lights with brilliant stars of gold and various colored stars. How can I look on such beauty and not be awestruck so much that I am speechless? Oh, the wonder of it all! The little singing angel is silent for the moment. The potpourri Jason gave me sends a faint fragrance. Marilyn's card, "Bless my mom," sends me love across the room. On this Sabbath day, I am so aware of all my gifts from God. My heart sings praises to God for everything. My dear children, their love and kindness tome the wonder of the universe. How great thou art. October 25th, 1990. Paul called a few nights ago. He was quite happy. Plus 7%. He had been to the doctor for a checkup. He took the treadmill test, etc. He fairly glowed with happiness as he repeated what the doctor had said to him. The doctor was amazed at his good health and fitness. Well, of course, I landed on cloud 9, as I always do after talking to him. How sweet he is. Today I had my hair done. Lately, I have been feeling a trifle low because of things happening here, getting my heat adjusted for winter. And some days I have been a little lonely. But one do a lot of praying, and God seems to always answer my prayers. For today, I was sitting alone, a rap on my door. It opened, and there stood a man and his wife, brother and sister Christensen. He is the branch president. How happy I was to see them. We had a delightful visit. Again, I feel God is ever mindful of me. October 27th, 1990. Big homecoming today in Logan. Gerald called at 9 a.m. We laughed and visited. He sounded happy. They are sending some of my belongings I left there. I called him back and asked him if he would please send my room also. They and I call it my room. One jokingly asked him to send the huge maple tree, which spreads its motherly limbs across the front balcony, and also a scarlet cardinal. Wishes are fun anyway. We had our moments of magic and laughter together. It made my day. Outside my door, 2 maiden trees are bright gold in the sunlight of an October breeze. November 4th, 1990. Skies are gray, but the fast-falling leaves are gold. A somber atmosphere rests everywhere. But my spirit soars to far places filled with dear memories, and I am aware of my many blessings. Lean only say, how great thou art. Thanks with all my heart and soul. Breakfast with Evan. Miss the girls. December 11th, 1990. How can I be so slothful as not to write in this dear diary when so many lovely things happen to me each day? Since I have written, Robert N. has sailed on his ship to the Persian Gulf. He made a special trip to see me before. How wonderful he is. I pray for his safety always. Kate Nuffer Vargas has called me several times. John N. is leaving for Tokyo, Japan in January 1991. Garth has bought a new home in Wash, D.C. Kate tells me she is having a memorial service for her dad. How sweet she is. Noreen Wilson stopped in the other day. Tonight, Barbara N. and Liz stopped by with bluebird chocolates, cranberry bread, raspberry jam, and a lot of love and good cheer. They were helping John Neuffer from Columbia on his job of decorating the home of Dr. Goebel, formerly the mayor's home. How can I be so fortunate, blessed with such good things? The good time with Elaine, Myra, Kay, and Boots make each day a delight. Brenda came in for a poem I had written to be in the next month's repartee. Christmas 1990. Everything was lovely. Beth made a beautiful spray of pine cones and greenery from the trees outside the house, tied it with red ribbon. Every time I pass the door, it fills me with love and warmth from Beth's sweet act. I love it and will never forget it. December 29th, 1990. Had my hair done yesterday. Gerald called. They leave Monday for Hawaii. But more important, I talked to Sasha and Julie, my two sweet friends who visited me when I was in Columbia. They both are in college now. I shall never forget them. They put me on cloud 9. Said goodbye to Gerald. I told him a cloud of wind swept by the window as we talked, but didn't mind, for sunshine is in my heart. February 26, 1991. So much has happened. It seems as if the Persian Gulf War may come to an early end. Gerald called tonight, saying his grandson David called from Saudi. It sounded like he was in the room. Gerald said that David's commanding officer had asked him to prepare plans for restoring an ancient building in the biblical land of Ur, which was Abraham's birthplace. It seems that the Iraqi army had used it as an observation post, and the American Air Force had practically destroyed it. So the Americans had agreed to restore it and asked people in the service with expertise in structural design to help. He said it was exciting and a great opportunity for him. May 1991, Garth called from Wash, D.C. How wonderful he is. We visited. What a blessing he is to me. We talked about the news. CNN? He has a big thing going now whether we should trade with Mexico. He ended by saying PPP was quite a man. How I love him. June 3rd, 1991, Gerald's grandson David and his wife Tammy visited with me. Dear Paul called me. He saw some wild flowers on his hill. They made him think of me. A chronological history of Camille's life in pictures. 1893, Camilla's mother, Ellis Pratt. 1897, Camilla's oldest brother, Franklin Moroni Cole. 1903, Camille and parents, Robert Franklin and Ellis Pratt Cole, with horse and buggy, Preston, Idaho. 1909, Camille's father, Robert Franklin Cole, front left, and 9 of 10 older brothers and sisters, sister missing. Probably taken at father's death in May 1911, Camille and Mabel, front left to right, Frank and Cliff. Preston, Idaho, 1911, Camille in her eyelet dress. 1916, Camille and mother, Ellis Pratt Cole, in front of Preston farm home. Note, Ellis's farmer's suntan and working clothes. 1917, Camille's third from left, third row back. 8th grade class graduation. 1918, Camille Pratt Cole. 1919, Camilla and friends. 1919, Camille's 16th birthday party. Left to right, Ethel Warwick Cole, Jesse Fletcher, Camille, Glenn Cole. C. 1920, Camille Cole. Probably graduation picture 1921, Myron David and Camille Cole Nuffer. Wedding picture 1921, Camille Cole and Myron David Nuffer. Marriage picture 1925, Gerald and puppy named Bart at the Cole farm in Preston, Idaho. 1930, Gerald, Camille, Beth, and Frank at the farm home in Preston, Idaho. Note how thin and tired Camille looks as a result of their struggle with the great 1929 Depression. 1930, Gerald, Frank, Myron, and Beth, Sunday morning on the south doorstep, NF the Preston Farm Home, 68E, 1935, Paul Cole Nuffer. Already eager to take charge of his own life. 1938, Cole brothers at mother's funeral. 1938, Camille and Frank. 1938, Clifford Pratt. Cole, Camille Cole Nuffer and Franklin Moroni Cole. 1938, Cliff, Glenn, Mabel, Frank, and Camille in front of the Preston Farm Home at mother's funeral. 1938, Cliff and Ethel Cole, Mabel Cole Hillam, Glenn Cole, Myron and Camille Cole Nuffer, and Frank Cole at the funeral for their mother, Ellis Pratt Cole. 1940, Camille Cole Nuffer and sister Mabel Cole Hillam. 1941, the Myron and Camille Nuffer family, front row left to right. Frank, Myron, Camille, Paul, back row, Beth, Gerald. 1943, Camille, Beth, and Pearl Johnson Carter, Mark Carter's mother, at Beth's wedding shower at the Preston Farm Home. 1943, Marilyn, Camille, and Paul in front of Preston Home. 1943, Joan Marilyn Nuffer inherited her mother's beauty. Down Happiness Road, a completely charming volume of poems reminiscent of home and the sphere of life which surrounds it, will make its first public appearance Saturday on the shelves of the Hart Music Shop in Preston. Volumes from the first edition are being made available within the community in which their composer, Camille Cole Nuffer, has spent her entire life. Other editions will be released through regular channels of publishers, the Deseret News Press, following the initial release of the book, which has been withheld until a time when it could be made available at home. Mrs. The Nuffer has won recognition throughout church circles and magazines with her writings, and some of the poems which have been published previously are now included within the attractively bound volumes by the permission of these publishers. Many requests have been received from prominent Utah writers for copies of the book, Down Happiness Road, since it was learned that the book was being compiled. Mrs. Nuffer is the daughter of Franklin and Ellis Pratt Cole, both deceased, and is the wife of Myron D. Nuffer, to whom this first book is dedicated. There are 5 children in Mrs. Nuffer's family, 2 girls and 3 boys. The word glimpses of love and care that are woven into these pictures of a family growing up together are as refreshing to the reader as the simplicity with which the poems are written. At present, Mrs. Nuffer is at work on a second volume of poems. 1944, Camille Cole Nuffer, photo taken for publication of her book of poetry. 1944, news article announcing publication of her book of poetry. Down Happiness Road. 1947, Paul and Camille. 1948, Camille and Marilyn in front of Preston Town Home. 1948, Camille and Marilyn in front of Preston Town Home. 1948, Preston Town Home that Dad built. 1948, Myron and Camille in front of their Preston Town Home that Dad built. 1949, Myron, Camille, Frank and Marilyn. 1959, Myron and Camille Nuffer, family in front of the home that Dad built for Mother on Ellsworth Doctor in Bozeman MT. 1960, Myron at Bozeman MT Town Home. 1961, Camille in English Graveyard where some of her ancestors are buried. 1961, Camille, Marilyn, and Myron in Frankfurt, Germany. 1962, Myron and Camille with the English Building Missionaries at the Stockport Chapel building site. 1961, Myron and Camille in front of Bozeman Town Home just before leaving for their mission. 1962, Camille on mission in England. 1963, Camille in front of a huge rhododendron bush in England. 1967, family reunion cake, a present from Sally Hepburn, mother of Cynthia Henhier Nenfer. 1967, Camille and great-granddaughter Donna. 1967, Camille, Donna, and Myron David III, Topeka, KS. 1967, Camille, Margaret, Donna, and Kathy, Topeka. 1967, Bozeman reunion, Camille and all of the girls in the family at Frank's home in Bridger Canyon. 1967, Myron, Camille, and Gerald, Columbia, Mo. Memorial to Camille's great-grandfather, Parley P. Pratt, apostle of the LDS Church near Alma, Arkansas, where he was killed. 1970s Camille and Red walking on the hill behind their chalet, row 7 and empty. 1970s Camille and hollyhocks beside the chalet that Frank designed and Dad knelt for her. 68 and 1971 Four Generations, Camille Carter Butler, Laura Butler, Beth Nuffer Carter, and Camille Cole Neuffer. 10 Sleep, W.Y. Nuffer Family Reunion 1971, July. Neuffer Family Reunion. Myron and Camille with 5 children and spouses as couples left to right. Gerald and Margaret Neuffer, Ron and Marilyn Tolman, Mark and Beth Carter, Myron and Camille, Frank and Cynthia Neuffer, Paul and Vicky Neuffer. 10 Sleep, W.Y. 1971. Four Generations, Catherine Nelson Neuffer, Donna K. Neuffer, Margaret McGregor Neuffer, and Camille Cole Neuffer. 10 Sleep, W.Y. Neuffer Family Reunion 1971, Myron and Camille. 10 Sleep Neuffer Family Reunion 1975, Camille and grandsons, Paul Michael Neuffer and John Franklin Neuffer at the Neuffer Family Reunion, Bozeman 1975, Camille Cole Neuffer. 1975, Camille and daughters, Beth Carter and Marilyn Tolman at the Neuffer Family Reunion in Bozeman, MT. 1975 assembled willing photo subjects from among the descendants of Camille and Myron at the Neuffer Reunion at their Kelly Canyon Chalet, Bozeman, MT. 1977. Myron Neuffer Family Reunion, Carter Ranch, 10 Sleep, W.Y. 1977. Camilla in Columbia, MO 1978. Camille in Phoenix visiting Marilyn Nuffer, Tolman. 1980 Camille and daughters, Marilyn and Beth Family Reunion 1982, Lee and Camille Neuffer Olson Logan, Utah, home. 1982 Camille and sons Paul and Gerald Logan home chalet, Bozeman, MT. 1982 Vicky daughter-in-law, Beth, Camille and Marilyn, Logan home. 68R 68's 1983 Myron David Nuffer IE and Camille Columbia, MO 1983 Cole Nuffer and Camille Columbia, MO 1983 Donna Nuffer and Camille Columbia, MO 1983 Camille and Ty Nuffer Columbia, MO 1983 Four Generations, Donna K. Neuffer, Catherine Nelson Neuffer, Margaret McGregor Neuffer and Camille Neuffer, 1984 Margaret Mabel sister and Camille at Logan, Utah home. 1986 Camille and most of Gerald's family, Columbia, MO. 1991 Ken and Marilyn Neuffer Tolman, Sathers and her children at Camille's burial in the Preston, Idaho cemetery. 1991 Camille's sons and daughters, Gerald, Marilyn, Paul, and Beth at her funeral. 1991 Cole, Eflam, and Neuffer cousins at Camille's funeral in Preston, Idaho. 1991 Cynthia Hepburn and Frank Neuffer's children at Camille's burial in Preston, Idaho. Left to right, Garth Neuffer, Kathy Neuffer, Vargas, Cynthia, John Neuffer, Robert Neuffer, and Christine M. Neuffer. 1991 Ken and Marilyn Sathers and her family following the funeral at Alwyn's Chanel in Lopan. Utah. 1991 Paul and Vicky and their family following the funeral at 11th Ward LDS Chapel in Logan, Utah. 1991 Mark and Beth Carter and their family following the funeral at 1 Ward LDS Chapel in Logan, Utah.